Hey, this is Bishop Jackson on Affinity Xtra, where we do extraordinary things. Thank you so much for listening to the second part. I hope you're going online, and going on YouTube and just it's an easy way to send that and just send the show to other people as well. Okay? So remember that Affinity Xtra is doing extraordinary things. We are swimming upstream. We are moving against the tide of the day, and we are sharing with you what life could be like. What we need from you is no complacency. We want you to push, develop, and also represent us in your circles that you are in. All right? Thank you so much. This is Bishop Jackson on Affinity Xtra. Doing rock solid. So second part of my conversation with you on honoring Dr. King today was that now we move to a next level. Now we move to a next level of conversing about our dignity, the respect that we are supposed to have for ourselves, that we don't need anybody to tell us who we are. We know who we are. And so now we are reflecting on the fact of this journey about empowerment as well. So Dr. King says, listen, I'm going to read it now. He says, where do we go from here? Firstly, we must massively assert our dignity and our worth. We must stand up amidst a system that still oppresses us and develop an unassailable and majestic sense of values. We must no longer be ashamed of being black. Say amen to that. The job of arousing manhood within a people that have been taught for so many centuries that they are nobody is not easy. Even the semantics of our day make that which is black seem ugly and degrading. Wow, because Dr. King just did an experiment, and this is the experiment that they found. That there are 134 synonyms in the thesaurus about whiteness and the favorableness of whiteness. And there are 134. And then he said that there is 120, should I say there was 120 synonyms for blackness. And at least 60 of them are offensive. That's what he said. 120 synonyms for blackness, and at least 60 of them are offensive. Now you think about it when you read your dictionary. Black lie, a black day, a black moment, a dark day. Think about it. Think about it. When you think about it, you'll say, I'm gonna burn this dictionary. Just think about it yourself. And so he also says that he looked at the same theses. I think Malcolm X, if you watch Malcolm X, the movie, you will see that, and you'll be embarrassed to look at it, because you'll realize this is the dictionary that I've got on my shelf. 134 synonyms for whiteness that are positive, that are pure, that are beautiful, that talk about cleanliness, chastity, innocence. Even lying and having a white lie is better than a black lie. Even white magic is better than black magic. Lord, think about it. Dr. King said this is in the psyche of African people. And he said that another dictionary needs to be written. A dictionary. He said Ozzie Davis, great actor, said a new language needs to be spoken by African people, and a new dictionary needs to be placed in the life of us people and also the Americans. And he talked about that. So when you think about it as well, you've got to ask yourself the question, is that true of our day? And you imagine that, yes, it is. It's true of our day. When we start reflecting on the media's idea of who we are, we realize that there's so much negativity, and there's so much limitedness to who we are. If there's a story about creativity and dancing, then black people are on it. On music, then black people are on it. If there's nothing else, if there's intellectual capacity, if there's a child who saves a cat out of a tree, you know that in West Midlands they've gone to Worcester. And anytime they're in the middle of Birmingham, there's a shooting or there is something that going on in the middle of Birmingham. But when they're doing a nice feel-good factor story, watch them. They're gone out to Worcester and Herefordshire and worrying about the floods over there instead of everything that's happening in the midst of the urban area. we've got to think about it more carefully. And so Dr. King said this, he says, to offset a cultural homicide, which this is the term that you got to now honor Dr. King for these things, because we're going to also be talking about why he documented his journey with Stokely Carmichael when the rise of Black Power came and he had to face that off. So listen what he says, and I just need to register this part. I had to underline it in his speech. He said, one thing is clear. He said, to offset cultural homicide, the Negro must rise up with an affirmation of his own Olympian manhood. Whoa, read into that carefully. Any movement for Negro freedom that overlooks the necessity overlooks this necessity is only waiting to be buried. As long as the mind is enslaved, the body can never be free. Psychological freedom and a firm sense of self-esteem is the most powerful weapon against the long night of physical slavery. He said no Lincolnian Emancipation Proclamation, no Johnsonian Civil Rights Bill can totally bring this kind of freedom. The Negro will only be free when he reaches down in the inner depths of his own being and signs with a pen and ink of assertive manhood his own Emancipation Proclamation. What was he saying? It's time for self-empowerment. And he knows kind of where that comes from, because remember, they were grown in a segregated environment. So this is our challenge today as we reflect. We reflect on the things that are making us feel like lesser human beings. The things that are making us feel like we are the problem and not the solution. Please note this. Bishop tells you today that you are the solution to your problems. We are the solution to our challenges in our day. We are the solution for our children and for our women and for our men and for our environment. Listen what he says also. He says this, this self-affirmation is the black man's need. And it must be made compelling and beautiful. He says this as all. He said, this is the black man's need. He says, yes, you must say that I am black, but you must say I am black and beautiful. This self-affirmation is the black man's need, made compelling all the more by a white man's crime against him. And it's quite a challenge as a Christian to face this, because today, if you are not trying to build this multicultural environment before you are healed, you are seen as a Nat Turner trying to burn it down type of a character. You're more accepted in calm and non-black environments if you're a kind of an Uncle Tom character. I have to say it. I'm going to say it. But if you're a revolutionary that says there must be a time of repentance, reformation, reparation, and restoration. If those things don't happen, how can there be healing? And if you say, well, where do you get that from, Bishop? Jesus says, lay your gift down, make it right with your brother, because we have this ministry of reconciliation. How is it that the black Christian always feels like they have to be the reconciliation? Why do we always? Because we are always saying we forgive before we even know what we're forgiving. It's statistically shown that every time something happens to a black family and it's perpetrated by somebody else, a racist, murder or something, the media asks them the question, do you forgive your perpetrator? Before they are even reflecting on their own healing, they are asked, do you forgive your perpetrator? And so I've got to say to you this, there must be a reconciling of the hurt, the healing. And so Dr. King was reminding us that white racism and prejudice and supremacist structures need to repent. Because at the end of his speech, he said, listen, America, the first thing you must do is be born again. And that meant change your whole life. change your whole life. Now we go back to the conversation that Dr. King has in chapter 2 of where do we go from here. So he was speaking about where we are, and now he's speaking about where they're going from here. So the second thing he thought about, he says, another basic challenge is to discover how to organize our strength to become economic and a political power. Where have you heard that before? You've heard that in Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey spoke about self-empowerment, economic structure. This is the only way that we will rise ourselves up as a mighty people. Rise up, you mighty people. And so Dr. King was reflecting on his Garveyite roots. Believe you me, the Garveyite roots were in there. Self-economic empowerment. What was he saying to us? He said, listen, it is the strength required to bring about social, political, and economic change. This is the strength. This is the strength. The strength needed to bring about economic change is the strength to look beyond what you have now and to be able to build towards the future. If this radio station was to look at how many people were listening on their first forage into you listening to us now, from when the station started, would have give up long time, because it takes a long time to turn a long-term thing around. You have to sow the seed in the ground. And so for us, especially like our church, we've been through this journey of being now a church that is now more than just the Sunday to Sunday meeting. We started to go online. When we began to be online, there were not many people watching us. But now we have pushed. We had a subscription of about 30, 40 people. Now our subscription is around about 1,500 people subscribing to our channel, and we've got more than that watching on a weekly basis, more than that watching. But we started with a small seed in the ground. Dr. King was saying to us this, to bring this change, we need to start about organizing our strength into economic and political power. And that is the thing that we now need to understand. What does he say as well? He says, now no one can deny that the Negro is in dire need of this kind of legitimate power. And so he was moving from black power to economic power. Now, underneath was the conversation with Stokely Carmichael behind the scenes. Stokely Carmichael was saying to him, it's time for us, Dr. King, not to walk around and talk about how to come together. It is time for us to now become empowered in ourselves. And when we are empowered in ourselves, we can then come alongside anybody else who wants to be alongside us. But we want to be equal. We don't want nobody to give us a handout. We want to learn how to fish. And that's why when they went to this, they were talking about power. And in one of their meetings, as they were speaking about their freedom march, somebody said, we don't just want power, we want black power. Dr. King had a wrestling match with Stokely Carmichael and his team. But he said he understood it. But what he was saying to them is this. He was saying to them, I don't hear the Italians talking about Italian power, but they have power. He said that the Irish don't talk about Irish power. The Irish Americans don't talk about, they don't stand up and say Irish power, but they have power. He was also talking about the Jews, and he says the Jews don't talk about Jewish power, but they have power. And so what he was saying to them is that it's got to be more than a slogan. It's got to be more than just a conversation or a shout or a rallying cry. But Stokely Carmichael was saying that we have to have a rallying cry, because this group of people doesn't understand that we don't just want freedom. We want power. And power is talking about how to move forward economically, how to have a structure that builds us. One of the things it says now, power, properly understood, is nothing but the ability to achieve purpose. It is the strength required to bring about social, political, and economical change. I think that is a powerful statement that we see here. And I believe that so often we move power down to voice rather than the nitty-grits of political, social power and spiritual power as well. Because so many of our churches, we are there, we exist, but we don't have the movement. We don't have a move behind us. We are wrapped up in ourselves and we are tied behind our doors. And I think a new day needs to happen. So finally, as we reflect upon where do we go from here, Dr. King says also that, let me just remember what the third thing he said. The third thing he says to us is that we need to move to this point here now. He says it is precisely the collision. No, we go a little bit further. Let me go a little bit further. He says now we must develop progress rather than program. And he says, I can't stay on this for long. Progress that will drive the nation to guarantee annual income. Let me just debunk that for a minute, because I thought this was a powerful point. And this point, he was saying he can't stay on it long. But what he was saying was, in comparison to the economic stability of the white society, black society then had no economic strength. They weren't being paid well. So that this is the question that we're going to ask ourselves today. Is it the same that when we are in our professional industry, that by virtue of no promotion, we are not being paid as well as? That is the challenge. So what he was saying was, now we've got to look at this talking about being paid well, because being paid well means we are educated well. It means that we have stability. It means that we are not ghettoized. And when we are ghettoized, then ghettoization creates then the problems for our community. I understood that. I understood that because I can see that today. And it is a challenge for us today to look at how we become ghettoized by our environment. And some of us know that the environments that we are being ghettoized in, where there is not abject poverty, because we can't call ourselves people of abject poverty. We are now people who are living, say sometimes from paycheck to paycheck. And so in some of our homes, there is the challenge of financial well-being. So when children look towards their future, they look at other ways to gain affluence. And that is why some of the children run out on the streets. And so we have to challenge ourselves. Now, coming further to finalize our conversation today, why I reflect upon Dr. King's book is because it has a way forward for us. It has a way forward. Not only a way forward, but it reflects upon the things that are going to challenge us. Another chapter he puts in there is he deals with racism. And also he reflects upon when there was this empowerment by a political move by Lyndon Johnson's party. There was this big white backlash against lifting African people. And so he speaks about this backlash and really condemns it. And so even today, when we find that many churches have stood up, multicultural churches have stood up for the reflection of black suffering in the midst of white supremacist structures and white privilege, they have had a backlash. And that backlash has been there sometimes white and sometimes black members have rejected the idea. Now, I'm not one to 100% jump on Black Lives Matters, because I believe in, I love civil rights, and that has an ancient, a more older structure than BLM. I think BLM is very new, so I don't really worry about that. I believe in justice, and that's biblical. And so justice from a biblical perspective comes far before anything that I see in modern terms. Jesus bringing this justice element is far more ancient and also prophetic for our day. So that is what I lean upon. I am a non-Constantinian Christian as well. I look at the non-Constantinian Christianity that develops an understanding from Africa, North Africa in the early days, and from ancient Afro-Asian Palestine. And this is where you get Jesus challenging the authorities of the day to say, tell that old fox that I'll be doing my job. I'll be feeding the poor. I'll be giving them bread that they have never seen before. I'll be sharing myself with them. And so today now we have to be pushers against this day that we are living in. So as I close today, I say thank you, Dr. King, for your sacrifice for us. Thank you, Dr. King, for leaving us with your documented words that help us to be educated better in our rejection of militarism, racism, and materialism of our day, and standing for the least of these, which is what Jesus told us to say. Thank you so much for listening to Bishop Jackson on Affinity Extra. I've gone over time a little bit, but hey, what can I say? Didn't check the time. I need to learn. Look at your watch, JJ. This has been a great time with you for this year, and hopefully we will develop a few more subject matters. But as we honor Dr. King, let us remember that he was not just a 3-minute speech saying, I have a dream. He was a man who made a sacrifice, a man who walked with the poor. And as James Cone, and as not only James Cone, but Cornel West says, he was wed to the poor. God bless you.
What's going on, people? I'm DJ H, and make sure you check out all the stuff Affinity Extra's got going on, man. We've got loads of content, loads of things coming out. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel, you know. Listen, don't go anywhere, you know. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Subscribe is the main thing. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like it, and share it with your brethren, yeah?